Hello listeners, I'm your speaker Casey and welcome to the fourth and final part of the Laurie Vallow Chad Daybell story. The story that we have covered in some depth and will now conclude with where this case stands today. At the end of part 3, 2 sets of remains had been found on the Daybell property and Chad was arrested. This meant that both Laurie and Chad were jailed and awaiting further legal action. Before we get back into things, I just wanted to remind everyone that these episodes come with a trigger warning of violence, abuse, and murder. Before we begin, for anyone interested, I've just launched my first exclusive episode on Patreon for any patrons interested in subscribing to my content, and for the awesome patrons who are already supporting me. You can find this page at patreon.com/thecultvault. Likewise, I have set up a GoFundMe as my maternity leave is due to end in August and I would love nothing more than to be able to stay home with my beautiful baby boy and continue creating quality content for my amazing listeners. I'll post a link in the show notes. But for now, let's get back to the story. Tragically, on the 13th of June 2020, the remains found on Chad Daybell's property are positively identified as belonging to Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. The Ada County Medical Examiner made the positive identification. The Rexburg Police Department issue a press release that reads, "On the 6th of the 9th, 2020, at approximately 0700 hours, the Rexburg Police Department, assisted by the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, Idaho State investigators, and the FBI, served a search warrant at the Chad Daybell residence in Fremont County in regards to a missing child's investigation involving Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. During the search of the property, investigators found what appeared to be 2 sets of unidentified human remains. The remains were taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy and positive identification was performed. It is with heavy hearts that we can now confirm that those remains have been officially identified as JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. We would like to thank all of the law enforcement officers involved, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, family, friends, and everyone throughout this community and across the country for their diligent and tireless efforts to find JJ and Tylee. It is not the outcome that we'd hoped for, to be able to find the children safe. Our hearts and prayers go out to the families of JJ and Tylee. This investigation is still active and ongoing." This came from Assistant Chief Hagan in the Rexburg Police Department. Chad's brother releases a statement that reads, "The events of the past 9 months have weighed heavily on our family. It has been one of the most difficult things we have ever had to go through. Some in our extended family are still struggling to accept the reality that Chad could have been involved in something so terribly wrong. On behalf of myself, my wife Heather, and our 4 children, we express our most sincere sympathies to Larry and Kay and to JJ and Tylee's entire extended families. We are devastated by today's news and the apparent role that Chad has played in what has transpired. Heather and I have communicated many times in person and by phone with Larry and Kay over the past several months. They have been examples of courage, strength, and kindness to us throughout this difficult trial that they have been forced to endure. Throughout this ordeal, we have supported one another in pursuit of the truth, and we will continue to do so. They have been praying for our family as we have prayed for them. Our heartfelt love and prayers continue to go out to them and their family at this very difficult time. We also continue to pray for Tammy and Chad's adult children and their spouses. Because of the difficulty of the situation, our relationship with them has been significantly strained. As a result, we have had no contact with them or Chad for the last many months. We do not know where his children stand at this time. As such, we ask for patience and compassion for them and for all of our extended family as we cope with the horrific events that have come to light. Matt and Heather Daybell." Going back to the article discussing how police knew where to search on the property, the rest of it reads, "Tylee was last seen alive at Yellowstone National Park with her mother, JJ and her uncle, Laurie Daybell's brother, Alex Cox. Cox was on law enforcement's radar because a few months before the children's disappearance, Cox admitted to shooting and killing Laurie's estranged husband, Charles Vallow, in July of 2019. Cox then joined his sister in Rexburg and moved into the same apartment complex where she lived with JJ and Tylee. Surveillance footage also shows Cox visiting a Rexburg storage facility in October several times with Chad and Laurie Daybell. Police used data from Cox's cell phone to pinpoint his location during and after the Yellowstone trip. The records showed Cox went to his sister's apartment at 3:37 a.m. on September the 9th, the day after Tylee Ryan was last seen alive. Police note this is significant because it is the only time in the month he appeared to go to her home between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. By 4:37 a.m., Cox had returned to his apartment. A few hours later, at 9:21 a.m., his phone pinged on the Chad Daybell property. Additionally, FBI agents found text conversations between Chad Daybell and his wife at the time, Tammy Daybell, on September 9th. The text conversations read, Chad, 11:53 a.m. Well, I've had an interesting morning. Felt I should burn all of the limb debris by the fire pit before it got too soaked by the coming storms. While did so, spotted big raccoon along the fence. Hurried and got my gun. And he was still walking along, got close enough that one shot did the trick. He is now in our pet cemetery. Fun times. Chad, 11:56 a.m. Gonna shower now, then go right for a while at BYU. Love you. Tammy, 2:47 p.m. Good for you. Chad, 2:48 p.m. I'm back home now. Tammy Daybell died in her sleep on October 19th. Her body was later exhumed by police to investigate her cause of death. Chad Daybell married Laurie Vallow a few weeks after his late wife's death. Chad Daybell's pet cemetery referenced in the texts is in the same location where Cox's cell phone pinged the night of September 9th, police said in the affidavit. JJ was last seen alive in the evening of September 22nd. Police said when friends inquired where JJ was the next morning, Laurie Daybell said he was with Cox. The affidavit says JJ was registered at Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg the first week of September, and just weeks later he was withdrawn from the school. JJ had an unexcused absence on September 23rd, and the next day his mother told the school district JJ would be going to Louisiana with his grandparents and wouldn't be home until at least the end of October. On October 29th, police say Laurie Daybell told school officials JJ would be homeschooled. However, no evidence of homeschooling materials were found when police searched her living quarters in Kauai. It appears JJ never enrolled in another school following this, as no other school district ever requested his records from the district. Cell phone records show Cox, again, on Daybell's property on September 23rd. Laurie Daybell told friends she knew her son was a zombie because he would sit still watching TV. She claimed he loved Satan and he had an increased vocabulary. On the night of September 23rd, friends said they were preparing to record a podcast and JJ was acting up, so Cox took him to his apartment. When Cox returned later, he was carrying JJ, who appeared to be asleep with his head on Alex's shoulder. The friend who told police this detail said he remembered it specifically because he saw it as a tender moment. The next morning, the friend asked Laurie where JJ was, and she told him JJ had been acting like a zombie and had been crawling on the kitchen cabinets and gotten on top of it between the cabinet and the ceiling. When JJ was climbing on the cabinets, he knocked a photo of Jesus off the fridge, Laurie told the friend. She then said Cox had come to get JJ again. Cell data from Cox's phone on September 23rd shows he went to Chad Daybell's property at 9:55 a.m. and stayed until 10:12 a.m. near the pond at the northern edge of the property. Cox only went to Daybell's property 4 times in September. Cell phone records show September 6th, Cox stays at Chad Daybell's property for about 10 minutes. All pings were in and around the house, no pings anywhere in the backyard near the fire pit or pond. This is 2 days before Tylee was last seen alive. September 9th, Cox arrives at 9:21 a.m. behind Chad Daybell's house near the east end of the barn the day after Tylee was last seen alive. Cox is still at the home at 10:39 a.m. Cox's phone pings at 10:47 a.m. in St. Anthony. However, police say in the affidavit they were unable to tell if he was actually inside the city limits of St. Anthony at that time. St. Anthony is about a 5-minute drive from Chad Daybell's residence. Cox is at Chad Daybell's property from 10:57 a.m. to 11:39 a.m. Cox is at Del Taco in Rexburg from 11:52 a.m. to 12:02 p.m. His entire visit at Chad Daybell's home lasted around 2.5 hours. Chad Daybell texts his wife about burning limb debris at 11:53 a.m. September 23rd. Cox stayed on Chad Daybell's property for about 17 minutes. This is the day JJ had an unexcused absence from school. September 25th, 2 days later, Cox stays on Chad Daybell's property for about 15 minutes. All pings were in and around the house, no pings anywhere in the backyard near the fire pit or pond. This is only 3 days after JJ was last seen alive. In December, Cox had blood clots in his lungs and died of natural causes, according to the report from the county medical examiner. Surveillance footage showed Cox visiting a Rexburg storage facility in October several times with Chad and Laurie Daybell. Police searched Chad Daybell's home on June 9th after identifying multiple sites of interest, the pet cemetery and the locations of Cox's cell phone from September 10th to September 23rd. Authorities searched the location Cox was at on September 23rd and found a patch of ground about 4 feet by 2.5 feet that appeared to be disturbed. Underneath the top layer of sod, police found several large flat rocks and flat panelling underneath the rocks. Under the panelling was a large round object wrapped in black plastic. Authorities cut into the black plastic, discovered another layer of white plastic, and underneath that were human remains. Authorities searched the second site near the pet cemetery where Cox had been on September 9th and found animal remains. As they dug down further, they found bricks about 1 foot below the ground. 2 charred bones were found, but officials weren't immediately able to determine if they were human due to the condition of the bones. As investigators kept searching this area, they found charred tissue and more bones, which were positively identified as human remains. A few days after the remains were discovered, family and authorities confirmed that the remains belonged to JJ and Tylee. As of Friday, the children's causes of death had not been released. Chad Daybell has been charged with 2 counts of concealment of evidence, both felonies, and later pleaded not guilty. On June 10th, Annie Cushing, the lady whose timeline we are following for this entire saga, who pieced all of this information together, who provided a large chunk of the source material that I have used for all 4 parts of this podcast series, Tylee and JJ's aunt, released this official statement. Thank you for the overwhelming outpouring of love for Tylee and JJ throughout this crisis. My family and I eagerly await the results of the identification of the remains and autopsies, but have hope that there will be resolution and closure in the near future. As sad and taxing as this protracted investigation has been, I've been deeply touched by the heartfelt expressions of grief and kindness and support throughout this process. Tylee and JJ won the hearts of people all across the globe. I've seen and have been impacted by both the worst and best of humanity. Hopefully goodness and justice will win out in the end. We ask for privacy in this difficult time. On the 11th of June, Chad's parents would issue a statement with East Idaho News that reads, "It is with heavy hearts and extreme sadness that we wish to express our love and condolences to the families of Tylee and JJ. We especially want to convey our sorrow to Larry and Kay Woodcock and Colby Ryan for the pain and suffering they have endured for many months, and especially at this time. We have hoped and prayed over the many months for the safety and well-being of JJ and Tylee, and we are devastated by their passing. We are heartbroken that these beautiful children's lives were ended tragically and prematurely, and for the emptiness and pain it leaves in the lives of their loved ones. We also continue to mourn for Tammy, who has been a daughter and sister to us and part of our family for nearly 30 years. She was the sweetest and kindest person and a wonderful mother to her children. The lives of her children have been devastated since she passed away, and through the events of the past months and recent days, we empathise and know that for every family and loved one involved, healing may take a lifetime. We send our most sincere love and prayers to all who are suffering and grieving at this time, the Daybell family. Also on June 11th, Fox13now.com released an article with a statement from Chad's neighbours explaining how he acted strange around the time of the children's disappearance. The article reads, "A neighbour who lives across the street from Chad Daybell is describing what he saw in the months after 2 children went missing. The remains of those children were discovered on Daybell's property. Family members confirmed the remains recovered by Rexburg Police and the FBI belonged to Joshua JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. JJ would have recently turned 18 years old, and Tylee was 17. Both disappeared at different times from Rexburg, Idaho, last September." Matthew Price said he's lived across the street from Chad Daybell. Matthew Price said he's lived across the street from Chad Daybell the entire time that Chad and his family have lived here in Idaho. He's been following the investigation into the missing children and the suspicions that centred on his neighbour. "We've been very concerned the whole time for JJ and Tylee," Matthew said. He watched out his windows from his yard as law enforcement spent 2 days digging in Chad's yard and searching the property. Matthew recognised the area where investigators brought in a backhoe to dig a deep hole where it appears they recovered the children's remains. Now that he thinks back, he is remembering some incidents that stand out in that exact spot. "We noticed they were having a few bonfires that were kind of out of the ordinary," he explained. "They had a big bonfire last fall, and they had 2 or 3 big bonfires this spring. Last fall, no one knew about the disappearance of Tylee and JJ. Matthew described that things seemed okay, aside from these strange bonfires, but that he did have one weird interaction with Chad. He said Chad and his late wife Tammy Daybell came over to his house to buy pumpkins. He was strange, he was different," Matthew described. "He didn't talk a lot, he didn't make eye contact with us very much. Normally he would." Matthew said it was very out of character, but he figured Chad was just having a bad day. He said a week later, Tammy died. Eventually, Matthew learned about the search for JJ and Tylee and the investigation into Chad Daybell and his new wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, JJ and Tylee's mother. After Lori ended up in jail near Madison County, Chad returned to his Salem home. Matt recalled that Chad kept to himself for the last couple of months, barely leaving the house. He said when Chad did leave the house, it was late at night. Tuesday morning at 7 a.m, Matthew was standing outside when he said he saw a convoy of law enforcement coming down the road to serve a search warrant. They surrounded the home, he said, and made all of Chad's adult children leave the house. Chad also left, but Matthew said Chad sat in his car for hours. Then suddenly, Matthew saw Chad try to leave. "I saw his car take off down the road headed south towards Rexburg," Matthew said. "Just seconds later, the marked police cars had their lights and sirens on and floored it to go catch him." Now, Matthew's neighbour of several years is in jail, and police have made a devastating discovery right across the street from Matthew's home. Wednesday evening, police turned the home back over to the adult Daybell children. They were seen packing up and moving furniture out of the home, loading it onto a trailer truck and into truck beds. They quickly left. In all of this, what gives Matthew peace of mind is just knowing there's closure for Tylee and JJ, he said. Next, the community is hoping for justice. Along with this news article, on June 11th, Tammy Daybell's family would also release a statement through East Idaho News that reads, "As the family of our beloved Tammy, we want to extend our deepest and heartfelt love and sympathy to the families of Tylee and JJ. We share the pain of the tremendous and shocking loss you are enduring. We still suffer, and we will suffer with you for many years to come. Please know we will continue our prayers to strengthen your families, as you are finally able to properly lay to rest your precious Tylee and JJ. As matters move through the judicial process, we pray that each of our families can be strengthened and trust that justice will be swiftly served. We wish to thank the many members of law enforcement and the FBI who continue to work tirelessly as investigations continue, and the public who have shown so much love and support for our families. We also ask that our privacy continue to be respected at this time as we continue to grieve for Tammy, and the Woodcock and the Ryan families grieve this unfathomable loss. From Tammy's parents, siblings, and extended family. Colby visits the site where the children were found and would release a statement that says, "I'm so grateful to the amazing people who have shown so much Christ-like love to these beautiful kids and our family. Thank you everyone who came up to us and have been here at this fence, showing support. This is the hardest thing for everyone to face. But being able to be here was healing for us. Tylee and JJ, what an honour it is to be your brother. My joy is that I have so many memories with you both. We love you both. This isn't your grave. You will have beautiful ceremonies to honour you both. We love you." At Chad Daybell's property, there is a fence that goes all the way along, and pictures on the internet show members of the public have been and left flowers and teddies for miles and miles. On June 19th, EastIdahoNews.com released a statement about the children's remains. Be advised that this next part does come with a trigger warning. The article reads, "Court documents released Friday evening detail the horrific manner in which Joshua JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan were found in Chad Daybell's backyard. JJ was wrapped in plastic and bound by duct tape, while Tylee was dismembered and burned. It was later revealed that Tylee had been identified by a jawbone found in the shallow grave. Also notable here is how Chad was a gravedigger who once said the trick is to never dig the graves deeper than they need to be." On June 22nd, JJ's teachers at his school released a statement on 12news.com. The article reads, "There are still a lot of questions surrounding the death of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, two kids with ties to the valley who were found in Idaho last week. The children were found buried in the backyard of Chad Daybell, their stepfather, who is now facing charges for concealing evidence. Their mother, Lori Vallow Daybell, is also behind bars, accused of deserting her children. But before the kids were taken to Idaho, they were living in Arizona. JJ Vallow was enrolled at Lawrence Institute for Education, or the Life Academy, in Gilbert, for more than 2 years before staff says he was pulled abruptly from his second grade class a month before he went missing. I never thought this in a million years," said Nicole Rapp, one of JJ's teachers. "She was a great parent. She was on top of it with school. She would drop him off every day." For about 2 years, staff at JJ's school said they saw no red flags for Lori Vallow Daybell and her then-husband Charles. "They just embodied great parents," Rapp explained. But early 2019, Charles became worried, not just for his own safety, but for the children's. He told Gilbert police on at least 2 different occasions in January of 2019 that Lori's religious beliefs were too dark to handle. "I tried to support her as much as I could, but it's gotten really, really bad lately," Charles said to police in body camera footage released last week. "She's had a break." By July 2019, Charles would be dead, shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. That case is still under investigation by Chandler Police. The staff at JJ's school said JJ wasn't told about his father's death until August 2019, what would be his last day in the classroom. "His very last day with us, he came in very angry," said teacher Julia Allen. "The whole day he kept saying, 'My dad's not dead. My dad's not in heaven. My dad's just travelling. He's not in heaven.'" On the 25th of June, EastIdahoNews.com would release an article explaining that further testing had been requested on the remains of Tylee and JJ. The article reads, "Additional testing is underway on the bodies of Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow after the Ada County Coroner's Office completed autopsies earlier this month. Outside and ancillary testing has been ordered and will take several weeks to return. Once all the results are received, the forensic pathologist's report will be provided to the Fremont County Coroner," Ada County Coroner Dottie Owens said in a news release. Owens has signed an agreement with Fremont County Coroner Brenda Dye to provide pathology services on this case. Fremont County will pay all fees and maintains a responsibility for the investigation. Dye transported JJ and Tylee's remains to Ada County on June 11th after they were found buried on Chad Daybell's property. Tylee's body was dismembered and burned, according to court documents, while JJ's body was wrapped in tight black plastic and secured with grey duct tape. Authorities have not released a cause of death for either child. Daybell is charged with 2 felony counts of concealment or destruction of evidence. As this case is an open and ongoing investigation, no further information will be released by the Fremont County coroner at this time, Owens said. Autopsy results on Tammy Daybell, Chad's first wife, have not been finalised. Lori was charged with 2 felony counts of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence on Monday evening. The charges come about 3 weeks after investigators searched the home of her husband, Chad Daybell, and discovered the remains of Joshua JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, her 2 children. Rexburg police served a 3rd search warrant on the Daybell property home on Monday. Detectives were seen inside the house, exterior buildings, and in the backyard with cameras. They left with brown evidence bags. The initial appearance is scheduled for 4:30 p.m. Lori Vallow Daybell and her attorney, Mark Means, will appear remotely from Madison County Jail. EastIdahoNews.com will live stream the proceedings. On this day, Lori goes to court and is faced with new charges. Notably, on the 1st of July, she would actually have her charges dropped, but these would be the charges of child abandonment, which no longer apply, as tragically the children are deceased. These charges also needed to be dropped in order to free up the legal system of dates no longer needed for court, so that the legal team could build a case against Lori with new charges, most likely pertaining to murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, etc. When Lori was faced with new charges on the 30th, she appeared to cry in court. An article on EastIdahoNews.com reads, St. Anthony. Lori Vallow Daybell appeared to wipe away tears Tuesday afternoon during her initial court appearance on 2 felony charges of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. Lori and her attorney Mark Means participated in the hearing via Zoom from the Madison County Courthouse due to COVID-19 concerns. Judge Farron Eddins presided and Madison County prosecuting attorney Rob Wood joined from the office. Daybell's son and daughter-in-law, Colby and Kelsey Ryan, appeared on screen during the proceedings, and Eddins noted that Kay and Larry Woodcock, JJ Vallow's grandparents, were listening into the hearing. Colby appeared stoic throughout much of his mother's court appearance. Lori appeared in a long-sleeved blue shirt. She and Mark Means were wearing protective masks, which hid their expressions. She was able to see Colby on a large screen. She softly responded yes after Eddins read the criminal charges to her and asked if she understood them. She wiped her tears and reached for a tissue when Eddins mentioned Lori's daughter Tylee Ryan, whose remains, along with JJ's, were found buried in Chad Daybell's backyard in the Salem area of Fremont County on June 9th. Lori is accused of conspiring with Chad Daybell to willfully and knowingly combine, conspire, and confederate and agree to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. Regarding the remains of Tylee and JJ, police say the 2 lied to them about where the children were and refused to cooperate with law enforcement in their investigation. The hearing lasted about 15 minutes and Eddins kept Daybell's bond at $1 million. If she is able to post bail, she must reside in Jefferson, Madison, or Fremont counties. She will also be required to wear an ankle monitor. Lori is also facing 2 charges of desertion of children in Madison County, where she has been housed since March. Her husband is in the Fremont County Jail on 2 charges of destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence, with his bail also set for $1 million. Before the hearing ended, Eddins asked Mark Means if he had ever represented any other people associated with this case. He responded that he had not, and Wood interrupted. Your Honour, I need to interject. At a bail reduction here in Madison County, Mr. Means did represent to the court that he was also representing Mr. Daybell. There was no criminal matter against him at the time, but I think that is appropriate to know. Means did tweet on April 28th that his office was representing Chad Daybell and anyone wanting to reach him needed to contact Mark Means. Edins asked Wood and Means to each submit an explanation regarding the issue so the case can move forward. Daybell's next court hearing is scheduled for August 10th and 11th. On July 1st, a statement was released with East Idaho News explaining that there will be a service held for the children. It reads, "To the countless people who have loved and come to love our angels, JJ and Tylee, we thank you for the endless prayers and kind words of encouragement. You have truly uplifted and carried us through this nightmare. For that, we can never express the depth of our gratitude. We are humbled by the kindness of strangers and unity shown in hopes of finding the kids." On June 9th, our worst fears were confirmed with discovery of our beloved Tylee Ashlyn Ryan, 16, and Joshua Jackson Vallow, 7. We are utterly devastated trying to comprehend how our children, full of brilliant light and jubilance for life, ended at the hands of those who are supposed to love and protect them. We look towards our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ to give us even the tiniest bit of relief from this unfathomable pain and ultimately find some amount of peace. We have utmost faith in the judicial process and are confident justice will prevail. We want to express our immeasurable gratitude to the numerous law enforcement agencies and officers who worked tirelessly on this case amongst all the others within this tangled web. Like us, many want to bid final farewell to JJ and Tylee. All plans are pending since their bodies have not been released, nor an estimated date is given. Upon release, we plan public services to be held in Rexburg, Idaho, Phoenix, Arizona, then Lake Charles, Los Angeles. Please be assured, once memorial details are finalized, a public statement will be released. God bless all of you for the continued outpouring of love and comfort towards our families. We will never forget how blessed we are to live in a society of immense compassion, especially during these challenging times. We ask you to continue to respect our family's wishes of privacy during this difficult time. Warmest regards, the Ryan, Vallow, Woodcock and Boudreaux families. The next thing to note is that it is anticipated by Lori Vallow that the 22nd of this month, July, is supposed to be the alleged end of the world that she had been warning her late husband Charles Vallow not to get in the way of. As a god, her mission was to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming. That second coming was imminent, according to Lori. Jesus was headed to Earth in July 2020, and if Charles got in the way of that mission, Lori would murder him. This brings us up to where the case stands today. We know a little of Chad and Lori's strange religious beliefs and have touched slightly on the cult material used within this case. But before I wrap everything up, I wanted to bring you some other pieces of information. Former best friend of Chad, Eric Smith, released a statement about Chad, and he had this to say: "The truth of Chad." Smith, who said he once considered Chad a friend, now believes Chad used his spiritual knowledge and gifts to lure women in. This ability he had to present himself as a real pious human with humility, like a guru, I think he used that. I think he worked that angle on people. Smith told Inside Edition Digital. He was sort of preying on their religious backgrounds and beliefs in spirituality, Smith added. I know Chad is a gifted person spiritually. He does see things, I know he does, and I've tested him on that, and we have some very special conversations on spiritual matters. But when you start to use those gifts to take advantage of people, I think it's pretty sick, and I think you've crossed the line there. The member of Rowe's security team, who asked that his name not be published, said he witnessed Chad manipulate women at the 5 or 6 conferences he attended where Chad spoke. Chad was using his doctrine to groom women, to get them to do something that normally they wouldn't do, the security team member said. Or in other words, give up their creative power to him, for his own gain. He was no longer following the Creator's plan of agency, but he was trying to get women to do things that would give him more power. Chad rose to prominence as an author and publisher after writing fictional books for a largely Mormon audience, including ones that depicted life in an apocalyptic United States before the second coming of Jesus Christ. Lisa, a woman from Utah who asked Inside Edition Digital not to use her real name, said she met Chad in 2007 or 2008 after reading several of his books and helped organise speaking events for him where he would sell his books. When I first met him, I didn't suspect anything. We were selling books, and he was happy to get money. I liked his writing style, and other people did too, Lisa told Inside Edition Digital. Women have asked him for advice, and I don't know if any men did, but I know women would ask him because they felt he had some insight that maybe they didn't. Lisa said she was interested in his views on signs to watch for ahead of the second coming of Jesus. There are certain events, a sequence of events, and because he put it into a fictional story and people are looking forward to that happening, I think what gathered people in was that type of thing. They're looking for some types of clues or information about getting closer to the second coming of Christ. While men attended these events too, Lisa said, there was a large group of women interested in Chad's work. Rowe's security team member and Smith observed the same trend. Women tend to be a lot at these meetings because they're more in tune with their emotions, with the energy of what's going on, more empathetic, the security team member said. They would always come to him. Sometimes they would have a table with his books and be talking. I observed that sometimes he would stand to the side and talk privately, and a few times he would talk privately to just a single woman or a group of women. Smith said he attended several events in people's homes where Chad spoke, and one of them was organised by a small group of women in Rexburg who were interested in talking about polygamy. They were the ones that hosted Chad at one of these particular events, and he was kind of clinging around them. He liked them, I could tell, Smith said. I kind of sensed in some of those conversations they were discussing some yucky stuff. I honestly don't know if Chad had conversations with them about those things, but I do know that there are little groups of women, different groups, that were interested in those really fringe things that are pretty inappropriate and divisive for families. Rowe and Smith said Chad made lists of who he believed people had been in their past lives. Rowe said during meetings at the Brigham Young University Idaho campus, Chad would share those lists with her. Every time I'd seen him, a month later, there would be more and more people on this list, she explained. He would try to use my gifts to ask questions and to see if I would confirm for him some of what he was being told. In addition to mapping people's past lives, Chad was also assigning people numbers related to their estate level or ascension level, and whether their spirit was light or dark, Rowe said. In an October 30th, 2018 email obtained by Fox 10 Phoenix from Chad to Laurie, Chad ranked Laurie's family, including her husband Charles Vallow and children JJ, Tylee and Colby. Rowe said Chad had sent her a similar list ranking her own family members, but Rowe said she was disturbed by Chad's lists, believing it was not his place to judge people in that way. Her husband expressed his concerns too. I was really disturbed that he was ranking people in the church and people in his ward, Rowe said. But other people seem to be fascinated about Chad's views on their past lives, which are also called multiple probations. Smith helped organise 2 speaking engagements for Chad at homes in the Rexburg area, and said people were especially interested when Chad told them they had been a famous person like Joan of Arc in a past life. He was a self-appointed prophet or something to these people. He would make appointments and go over to their homes and present their little life history to them. That'd be pretty cool, right? Smith said. You'd know who you were, and when you lived and where, and what you did. That's pretty appealing to people. I could count on 2 hands probably people that I know personally that he did this with, including me. Chad's soft-spoken, humble demeanour was also part of his appeal, the security team member said. He was also very careful, and he used the awkwardness, the social awkwardness, to his advantage to kind of dupe people, he said. He even had the persona of being a little bit overweight, bad haircut, dressed kind of like a socially awkward person. At the bigger conferences, women approached Chad to ask about their past lives, the security team member said. These women would want to know things, and he put himself out there like he could see things, so that they would say, well, who was I? Having multiple lives is not new doctrine, he said. There's many religions who believe in it a lot, and lots of people who believe in it. It's not uncommon. What's uncommon is what Chad did with it. It was at one of those events in St. George, Utah in the fall of 2008 that Chad met Lori Vallow, a married woman and mother of 3 from Arizona. Chad told Lori that they had been married in a past life, according to their friend Melanie Gibb. Lisa said Lori started helping Chad sell books at his events, where Lisa also had a booth, and Lori was really flirty with him. But in this life, Chad and Lori were also married, to different people. Still, Chad and Lori quickly became close, Gibb told EastIdahoNews.com, and one of the 3 cell phones Lori used was just for Chad. Rose said Chad also asked her to call him on his separate phone, something she found odd. Lisa travelled from Utah to attend the Mesa, Arizona's preparing a people conference where Chad was speaking the weekend before Thanksgiving in 2018. To save money on hotel rooms, Lori offered to let Lisa, Chad, Melanie Gibb and others stay overnight at her Gilbert, Arizona home while her husband and children were out of town. Lisa said the group were all women, and Chad made cookies and talked the night before the conference, which was held on November 16th and 17th. Then Lisa said she walked in on Chad and Lori discussing the sleeping arrangements in the kitchen. Chad said he planned to sleep in Lori's son's room, but seemed nervous, she said. Lisa said she had never seen Chad behave inappropriately towards women, and only later realised why he seemed uncomfortable. I only got the end part of it, but all I knew was he was concerned that people would see him at the house, even though he was in the bedroom. And I thought, well, so what, Lisa said, but now I see why he was concerned. If you look back, you go, oh, that's why, because they were having an affair. Rose said that when she first met Chad in 2014, he was professional and appropriate, and she observed that he seemed to love his wife Tammy. Roe and Chad had originally connected on LDS AVOW, an online end times preparedness website. In February of that year, Roe said that she had decided to write about the dreams and visions she had after a near-death experience in 2004, during which she spent 2.5 days in a comatose state. Chad had written books about his own near-death experiences, and Rose said that she and Chad bonded over talking about them. She said she trusted Chad and became close with Tammy as well from 2014 to 2018, but in 2018 she started noticing some shifts in Chad but believed they were meant to continue publishing books. My husband knew very early on that Chad was off, and he would actually say to me, "Are you sure you can trust Chad?" I'm like, well, I don't trust everything he says, and I don't agree with what he's writing and what he's doing, but God brought us together, Rose said. In December 2018, Roe and Chad met at a restaurant in Idaho Falls for a breakfast meeting about publishing. Later that day, they met privately for an energy healing session in Rexburg. Roe does energy work. That's when she said the sexual assault occurred. Roe said Chad cried after he assaulted her, and that she tried to talk to him about his behaviour later that day in a series of text messages that December. After the alleged sexual misconduct, Rose said she came to believe that Chad had been grooming her and using discussions about spiritual beliefs to get close to her and use her. Then Rose said she confronted Chad about the alleged misconduct in several text messages in early 2019. In February, I confronted him on what he had done to me in December and what he had been doing to me all along when I finally woke up to the fact that he was using me and using my gifts, Rose said. It was unfathomable to me that he could use me like that, and when I confronted him on his patriarchal energy, which is, in my opinion, abusive energy, and his abuse of me and my gifts and using me, he basically sent a text back and said, "Wow, you really know how to burn bridges. I can't believe you. You don't know me at all." That December meeting was the last time Roe ever saw Chad in person. Roe was working on her podcast, writing an autobiography, Rising Above the Flames, and growing her non-profit organisation, the Greater Tomorrow Relief Fund. Rose said she texted Chad about publishing right issues during the spring of 2019. After she wrote him a handwritten letter in the summer of 2019, she said Chad called her in the fall and said something that disturbed her. 3 weeks before Tammy dies, he said to me, and he was in this frustrated voice, My plan can't move forward until Tammy's dead, or until Tammy dies, Rose said, explaining she believes Chad was referring to his life plan, or the plan that God had for him. I was disheartened and very disturbed by that. When I think of somebody who's predatory towards women, I think of how Chad has fit that. I look at all the women who believed that he was working for the light side, Rose said. I believe for a time he was, but people change. It's unfortunate how many lives can be affected by one choice. It just makes me wonder if Chad had unfulfilled desires and then mixed that with the gifts and the position and status and his ability to appeal to people, and it just created this perfect firestorm of scandal. When law enforcement began investigating Melanie Gibb and her ties to Laurie, an email sent from an anonymous source had been shared around the internet, allegedly by the person it was sent to. Sleuths suggest that it was written by Melanie Gibb. Melanie Gibb has since agreed to testify on behalf of Brandon Boudreaux, Laurie's niece Melanie's ex-husband. Brandon Boudreaux is going through a custody battle with his ex-wife Melanie, and Melanie Gibb has agreed to testify on behalf of Brandon. Some of the terms of this email are difficult to understand, and I apologise in advance for anything that I mispronounce, but we will go through some of the terms at the end of the email. Chad Daybell and Laurie Vallow. They met technically September 23rd, 2019 through Jason Mao at Temple. Chad was told around that time by one of the three Nephites, Mathoni, that a special woman would come into his life. November 2018, together at this point at the Mesa Preparing a People event, Chad and Laurie are sealed to each other in Temple, where they travel to another upper room, and Maroney gave Laurie to Chad. The Saviour was there. Maroney and Chad have been married to Laurie in many other probations. Laurie is their favourite spouse. Laurie has been on 21 planets and Chad 31. He was also once a Holy Ghost. Chad 5 times on this earth, and Laurie has been 4. Chad makes a portal in Laurie's closet so she can visit him. At this time, Chad told Melanie he has no relationship or interest in Julie Rowe. He had also previously said he didn't want anything to do with Suzanne Freeman. Laurie and Chad believe they are in charge of gathering the couples for the 144,000. They make charts of who the people are and who is sealed to who and how many probations they've had and who they have been in past lives. On a side note, it's important here, I think, to note that they are charged with the gathering of couples, which might explain why Laurie's niece Melanie suddenly remarried to somebody within the LDS church and somebody involved in Chad and Laurie's business, as well as Alex suddenly remarrying to Zulema Pastines, who was also involved in Chad and Laurie's work. This chart was on Chad's computer and in his email, so it is now public property. The 12 apostles are on this list. Tammy is on this list and was put down as being married to John the Beloved, who is also Enoch. Chad calls Laurie and tells her that Charles is now Ned Snyder. Laurie tells Charles he has become a zombie. His spirit has been hijacked by an evil spirit, and his spirit is in limbo. He was hijacked again and became Garrett. He then became Eblos. During this time, Laurie is completely open to Charles, who she thinks she is. When she met Chad, she had already been translated in her mind and stopped wearing garments because they are meant to be protection and she no longer needs it. Charles files for divorce and does a business trip to Texas. Laurie received a revelation that Charles will die in an accident on his way home from Texas. He doesn't die, and Laurie is frustrated and tells Melanie she better leave her house. She calls and has Alex come stay with her. Next morning, Charles is killed. Chad told Alex that he was the angel that had come and stopped Layman and Lemuel from hurting Nephi, and that he is now Laurie's protector. Alex believed all of this, and Melanie believes she was her hitman and did all the killings. Charles had Laurie committed to a mental facility, and they tested her, and she told them who she was. Translated, part of the 144,000, they let her go. July 11th, 2019, Charles is killed. September 2019, Laurie moves with kids to Rexburg. Melanie is aware that Chad and Laurie have taken trips together while both of them are still married to their spouses. They took a trip to visit multiple temples and receive revelation, and who is part of the 144,000. They get up early in the morning to walk around the BYU track together, holding hands and kissing. Tammy has become suspicious. Chad tells Laurie that Tammy has now become a zombie. Laurie, meanwhile, is telling Melanie that she can't wait to have sex with Chad and how it is such an important part of who you are and everyone should be having it at least once a day. And once she was with Chad, they would be having it 3 times a day. Chad and Laurie told Melanie and Alex, Kay and Tylee have now become zombies. Laurie withdrew them from school, and this was the last anyone saw of them. October 2019, Tammy dies. Chad calls Melanie and tells her not to answer the phone because the police would be calling her because he had told them that the kids were with her. Melanie asked her where the kids are, and he said they were with Kay. Later, police came to her house and she told them what she knew. She started fearing for her life. She left her kids with her recently divorced husband and kids' father and went and stayed with David Warwick in Utah. They have been dating and are on Chad and Laurie's chart. David becomes skeptical and wants out of it, sets her straight and has her give full report to the police. She also records a conversation over the phone with Chad and Laurie where she confronts them about their false beliefs and cheating on their spouses. Laurie blows her off and quotes scriptures of why Melanie is wrong. This was early January. November 2019. Chad and Laurie married, the day after Thanksgiving. Melanie receives an email from Laurie full of beautiful pictures of their wedding on the beach. She didn't know that they had gotten married at this point. December 2019, Alex dies. Possible blood clot in the lungs, ? Melanie says kids are most likely dead. All were probably killed by Alex. Melanie remembers that Laurie and Chad were frustrated why Tammy had not died yet. Chad told Laurie it's not that easy to get someone's spirit out of their body. At any time, Laurie and Chad could tell a number of zombies they were given in any state, usually around 20,000 nationally. They also said 2 of the apostles were zombies, Ballard and Renland. They also believed that SHTF is this year, and they could just wait this out in Hawaii and then come back. A fellow Redditor comes to the aid of some online users by explaining what some of these terms mean. They say, I used to be Mormon. I'm going to translate some of these Mormon-specific terms so you can get a full picture, and I'll do it with a few editorial comments so you get a sense of how Mormons interpret these phrases. 3 Nephites. In the main unique Mormon book of Scripture, the Book of Mormon, there is a story that when Jesus was resurrected, he also appeared to the people of South America who were descended from Jews that left Jerusalem in 600 BC. He translates 3 of these people, called Nephites after their founder, which means they are immortal and still walk the earth today. There are a lot of Mormon folk legends around the identity and actions of these 3 people. Sealed. Mormon for marriage. In the temple, a sort of special church that only really believing Mormons can go to, prospective married couples go through a ceremony where they pledge themselves to God and each other. Hilariously, or sadly more accurately, you have to wear special temple robes for the woman over her wedding dress. Moroni, or Moroni. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing these things wrong. The last main character of the Book of Mormon. His people, the Nephites, and the bad guys in the story, the Lamanites, have a big battle where every single Nephite dies but Moroni. Moroni takes the physical Book of Mormon, written on gold plates, walks from South America to New York and buries them in a hill to be dug up 1400 years later by Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. Allegedly, the Lamanites end up becoming the American Indians in Mormon theology. Side note, Mormon apologetics have attempted to reconcile this with the fact that Native Americans do not have Middle Eastern DNA, but this is how the vast majority of Mormons interpret the story. Probations. For some reason, Mormons like to refer to our existence as our earthly probation, so they are saying that they believe in multiple existences. Laman and Lemuel and Nephi. These are some of the aforementioned Jews. Laman and Lemuel are bad and don't believe in God. Nephi is good. At one point in the story, the bad brothers try to murder Nephi, and an angel stops them. When they all end up sailing to South America, Laman and Lemuel split off and form a civilization called the Lamanites. They are cursed with dark skin because of their wickedness. Nephi forms the Nephites. They follow God and are often described as being white and delightsome. The Book of Mormon is really racist. BYUI track, a track at the local Mormon college, Ballard and Renland, two of the aforementioned 12 apostles. So that's it. The idea of the 144,000 isn't unique to Mormonism. Neither is John the Beloved or Enoch. Zombies and all the other stuff are unique to Chad and Laurie. I also forgot to mention a super important one to this whole story, translated. So in Mormon theology, translated means either to be granted immortality or to be fast-tracked to heaven. They believe that the three Nephites up above were translated, as was John the Beloved. These people still walk the earth. When Jesus comes back, they will be rewarded for their faithful work. They believe also the prophet Enoch, from the Bible, led a city of people who were so righteous that they were taken straight to heaven. Melanie Gibb goes on to explain some of Chad and Laurie's cult beliefs in an article with EastIdahoNews.com. It reads, Melanie Gibb likely knows more about Chad and Laurie Daybell's relationship than anyone else. She was Laurie's best friend, attended conferences where Chad spoke, and was with them the moment they met. She saw the pair's friendship quickly turn into something more, and says Laurie confided intimate details about the couple's activities, beliefs, and future together. Gibb is an extremely private person who has been in hiding since December. That's when police announced Laurie's children, 8-year-old Joshua JJ Vallow and 17-year-old Tylee Ryan, were missing. Their mother has refused to say where they were and is in Madison County Jail on 2 charges of desertion and non-support of a dependent child. After remaining silent for 5 months, Gibb is speaking exclusively with EastIdahoNews.com about the case, what she knows, where she believes JJ and Tylee are, and how she got sucked into Chad and Laurie's religious circle. We spent several hours with Gibb in an undisclosed location and have separated our interview into 3 parts that will be posted Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Why Gibb is speaking out now. Gibb said she's been silent for one reason: fear. Fear for her safety. Fear for what will be reported in the media. Fear for her family, and fear that something could happen to her. When you realise that people you know, and you're close to, and love, have been involved in something that has to do with people dying, you start to think, oh my gosh, are they going to come after me? Gibb says. Everything closes in, and you start to think about your own safety and what really happened, and could this really be true? Gibb has spent this year facing her fears and coming forward on behalf of the innocent victims affected by the actions of Laurie and Chad. I think it's fair to Charles and JJ and Tammy and Tylee that somebody is standing up for what happened to them. I do care for them and the families that are involved, Gibb says. I decided the truth was more important than what I wanted. My goal is to speak to the things that have gone on and to those who have believed and Chad and Laurie's story. Gibb has been working with police since November, regularly speaks with investigators, and does not have an attorney. She says she does not need one because she is telling the truth and God is on my side. Gibb first met Chad Daybell a few years ago at a religious conference in northern Utah. He was speaking about his dreams, visions, and the last days. The self-published author had written several books, and Gibb was familiar with his work. I wanted to meet him because I thought his dreams were interesting, and when I met him, I thought he was a really nice guy, Gibb recalls. In October 2018, Gibb was teaching an evening class at her Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Gilbert, Arizona. Laurie was there, and the two did not know each other. She was very excited to hear the things I was teaching, so when I went out to the hallway, she came up to me and introduced herself, Gibb says. She told me about a lot of personal experiences she had that were spiritual in nature, and we just hit it off. The two became instant friends and spoke about everything from religion to motherhood to everyday life. A few weeks later, they travelled together to St. George, Utah for a conference where Chad was speaking and selling his books. Laurie immediately walked up to Chad and the conversation became personal. Gibb said he shared with her that they had met in a previous life and had been married multiple times before in prior existences. They started talking about these different beliefs that are not something you learn in church, Gibb says. She said they discussed things out loud that normally would be talked about privately. Chad's wife Tammy and their 5 children were not at the conference, but Gibb says Laurie was aware he was married. Laurie and Chad exchanged phone numbers and began speaking every day, according to Gibb. Within weeks of the St. George conference, Chad visited Arizona for another event. Laurie invited several people, including Chad and Gibb, to stay at her home. Charles Vallow, Laurie's husband, was out of town. Gibb remembers Chad and Laurie going on a walk or jog together and talking about things so personal it's so hard to share with the world. He was teaching us about some of the understandings about multiple lives and things of that nature, Gibb says. It was definitely different. The idea was definitely a new concept. Did I 100% believe any of it? No, not 100%, no. When you get introduced to something, you kind of let it marinate. I just listened to them talk about it. Gibb says Chad's teachings did not represent the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He met one-on-one with people and never held official gatherings or group meetings to discuss the concept. A lot of people have different ideas. Is this a cult? Is this not a cult? I would just say from the beginning it felt like he was talking to individuals, Gibb says. After the Arizona event, Chad and Laurie continued speaking with each other every day. Laurie had 3 phones, one designated solely for Chad, and he had a special phone for their private conversations, according to Gibb. At one point, Gibb suggested the pair should divorce from their spouses, but Laurie told her they were not allowed to because of information they were receiving from the other side of the veil. Chad and Laurie believed that they were the head of the 144,000 chosen people who were to prepare the world for a second coming of Jesus Christ. Gibb says they made her feel special and told her that she was an elect, or chosen. Gibb said she thought their beliefs were a little unusual. When she taught me, she was always leading me to believe they were true, and there would be times I would say, "Do you think that's a good idea?" I didn't voice much opposition, but just listened more, Gibb says. Gibb remembers the first time she met Charles, Laurie's 4th husband. They were having a barbecue at the Vallows' home, and the kids were in the swimming pool. He seemed like a nice guy, happy to see us, happy to meet us, about his conversion to the church, and he seemed to be pretty excited about it, Gibb recalls. Gibb never saw Charles lose his temper, but says he and Laurie often argued. She confided in Gibb that they were having marital problems, and there was a lot of contention. He was trying to do things to help her and please her, and she seemed like she was struggling to be happy by that, Gibb says. She seemed a little frustrated with him. They had something going on that I didn't quite understand. Later, Gibb met Laurie's brother Alex Cox and her niece Melanie Boudreau, now Paulowski, at the same home. Everyone got along, and Gibb describes them as a group of good friends. It was fun and enjoyable. Alex was fun. He was a comedian kind of guy. We talked a lot about all kinds of stuff, sometimes spiritual stuff, sometimes non-spiritual stuff. In the beginning, it was just more casual, Gibb says. Melanie Paulowski was fun. I really loved Melanie. She seemed that she had a lot of strife going on in her life, and she was really worried about her family. The group didn't get together often, but remained close as Chad continued to share his unusual teachings. Laurie eventually stopped going to church but would attend the temple as often as she could. It was her favourite place, according to Gibb, and even though she was still married to Charles and Chad was married to Tammy, they would go to temple together. One day, Laurie told Gibb she was sealed to Chad. Latter-day Saints believe relationships continue after death for a husband and wife who are sealed in the temple. Sealings are performed by officiators in the temple and are recorded in church records. People cannot be sealed to a second spouse if they are legally married to a living person already. Laurie said they felt they were sealed by those on the other side of the veil that had the authority to do that, Gibb says. She said it was okay that they did this because they had been married so many times before that their current spouses would understand someday. Other teachings alarmed Gibb, such as Chad creating a spiritual portal in Laurie's closet or other places. A portal is a spot where he said a prayer or something to create the portal. I wasn't there, so I don't know, but it was a way for them to interact spiritually, Gibb says. I thought it was different. I thought, how do you do that? It was pretty extreme, but to me, everything was new. Gibb says Chad had an extensive chart that ranked people based on their spiritual level. It showed biblical apostles, the current Latter-day Saint 12 apostles, celebrities, friends and family members. It was 4 pages, and Gibb said it detailed how many lives each of the people had lived, whether they were dark or light spirits, their previous names, and other bizarre information. Laurie had experienced 21 lives, and Chad was on his 31st life, according to the chart. Both had lived 5 lives on Earth, and Chad was considered a holy ghost. It should be noted here that this information differs slightly from what Julie Rowe was saying previously. She said she always had a little bit of doubt about what Chad was saying, and Laurie did too. 2 to 3 times Laurie said to me, if Chad is Satan, he sure is a good one. That tends to lead me to believe she wasn't 100% convinced either. Chad and Laurie only seemed to share these extreme beliefs with those who were close to them. Looking back now, Gibb believes they kept it private so their church membership would not be in jeopardy. When you go in the temple, there are certain questions they ask to see if your belief systems are consistent with the doctrine, Gibb says. They were inconsistent, so there's the reason they were being so secretive about it. She said their doctrine was not affiliated with any Christianity she knew of. It's not doctrine that comes from Jesus Christ, it comes from the adversary, or devil, she said. One person notes how in an early autobiography, Chad writes, "Then I smashed it with my shoe. I spotted another one, then another one. I got a strange satisfaction from it. I kept count. After about half an hour, I had killed 120 bees." Somebody online says this could be an early indication of Chad's psychopathy. Another person posts a section from his autobiography that reads, "It was only fitting that Tammy and I had our engagement photos taken in the cemetery. Here we are being a bit playful." You can see in the picture that Tammy is leaning on a headstone with her hand above her eyes as if she were looking out into the distance with a smile on her face, and Chad is peeking out from behind the headstone, smiling up at Tammy. Another person online, on the Laurie Vallow Reddit thread, goes on to talk about how Chad thinks he is Joseph Smith, and a lot of what he preaches is in line with what Joseph Smith was preaching and the ideals within Mormonism. The Redditor goes into detail saying, "I think a lot of people think that Chad made this stuff up or tried to create a new cult. The stuff that Chad believes, although he may have used the terminology differently, was very different to what Joseph Smith and his family themselves believed and practiced. Although the Mormon Church has left a lot of this behind, if you've ever done a study on Joseph Smith and the occult, you'd understand what Chad was saying is in line with the thinking of Joseph Smith. Also, I don't mean to offend anyone who is Mormon. I realise that the Mormon Church doesn't still practice a lot of these things, but it's also important to know where the religion came from and how it started. This is very important to the case as it deals with why Chad called himself a seer, why certain dates were important, why he communicated with the dead and thought he had some special magical powers, why him and Laurie had things on their list like deciphering ancient text, all things Smith claimed to have done. Even the fact that there may have been animal bones in his backyard, which lot more than just a single raccoon. Besides just learning and growing up in Mormon religion, it seems Chad also studied Joseph Smith's life and his own beliefs and went from there. Joseph and the occult. Besides seer stones, Joseph's involvement with the occult also included divining rods, magic circles, sacrifice of animals, and witchcraft. The family's involvement in witchcraft was confirmed by Fayette Lapham, who, after visiting the Smiths, wrote, "Joseph's father was a firm believer in witchcraft and other supernatural things, and had brought his family up in the same belief. While one may view this as shocking, one needs to understand the climate of his culture. Belief in magic was not unusual. Mormon historian B.H. Roberts acknowledged that Smith's family believed in fortune-telling, warlocks and witches, and added that to be credulous in such things was to be normal people. Joseph's use of peep stones and divining rods. Peep stones Joseph learned how to use peep stones from his father, Joseph Smith Sr. Placing them in a hat, he would receive revelation on buried treasure locations. Known as a money digger, he hired out to locate these caches. An affidavit by David Stafford confirmed that the general employment of the Smith family was money digging and fortune telling. Joseph therefore naturally followed in his father's footsteps, even long before he claimed to find the gold plates of the Book of Mormon through his Peep stone. He was finding buried treasure and deciphering ancient writings. In one instance, according to William R. Hine, he gazed into his stone and saw Captain Kidd sailing on the Susquehanna River, and that he buried 2 pots of gold and silver. He claimed he saw writing cut on the rocks in an unknown language, telling where Kidd buried it, and he translated it through his peepstone. According to Brigham Young and Martin Harris, it was through a peepstone found in the well of a Mason chase that Smith located and translated the gold plates. This, of course, contrary to his later story, where he said that it was an angel who directed him to the gold plates. The stone found in Mason Chase's well was first used during Joseph's occupation as a money digger. Mormon history refers to it as the brownstone. Joseph Smith's father, when interviewed by Fayette Lapham, said Joseph spent about 2 years looking into this stone, telling fortunes, where to find lost things, and where to dig for money and other hidden treasure. He also used peepstones to read palms. The Mormon practice of giving patriarchal blessings is no doubt the outgrowth of Smith's fortune-telling practice. He also had a white stone called an Urim or Thummim. It is with this stone, rather than the brown one, that he claimed to translate the Book of Abraham. Joseph's use of magic circles. The magic circles Joseph's mother mentioned in their use of the faculty of Abrach to find treasures were the same as witches use. For example, William Stafford, a contemporary of Smith, tells how Joseph said there was a buried chest of gold guarded by an evil spirit. For example, William Stafford, a contemporary of Smith, tells how Joseph said there was a buried chest of gold watches guarded by an evil spirit. To pacify the spirit, he ordered stakes set up in the form of a circle. He then sent a man to obtain a long knife or sword and to march around the spot with drawn weapons to guard against any satanic assaults. Treasure spirits were usually considered evil and were thought to have the power to kill a person unless appeased by magic circles and blood sacrifices. In this activity, Joseph and his father worked in conjunction with each other. Often, while his father was performing this service for customers, Joseph would be in the house using his peepstone to keep track of what the evil spirit was doing. William Stafford again gives an account. Joseph Sr. first made a circle, 12 or 14 feet in diameter. This circle, said he, contained the treasure. He then stuck a row of witch hazel sticks around the said circle for the purpose of keeping off evil spirits. Within the circle he made another, of about 8 or 10 feet in diameter. He walked around 3 times on the periphery of his last circle, muttering to himself something that I could not understand. He then asked leave of absence and went to the house to inquire of young Joseph the cause of our disappointment. He soon returned and said that Joseph had remained all this time in the house, looking in his stone and watching the motion of the evil spirit. He then saw the spirit come up to the ring, and as soon as it beheld the cone which had formed around the rod, Joseph's participation, it caused the money to sink. Joseph's participation in animal sacrifice. Animal sacrifice was part of the treasure divining business. At the time, it was understood that there were both good and bad spirits guarding treasures. According to magic books, white animals were sacrificed to the good spirits and black to the evil. Therefore, Smith produced a black sheep for one occasion, claiming it was the only way to appease the evil spirit of a particular treasure. They were to cut its throat and lead it around in a circle while bleeding. Smith even sacrificed a dog on one occasion. Mr. Stafford, the owner of the sheep, was later asked by M. Wilford Paulson if Smith stole a black sheep from him. Stafford's response was, "No, not exactly. He did miss a black sheep, but soon Joseph came and admitted he took it for sacrifice, but he was willing to work for it. He made wooden sap buckets to fully repay for it." A nephew of William Stafford testified that Joe Smith, the prophet, told my uncle William Stafford he wanted a fat black sheep. He said he wanted to cut its throat and make it walk in a circle 3 times around, and it would prevent a pot of money from leaving. In addition to Smith's peep stones and divining rods, he also carried animal sacrifice into his new religion. For example, he refused to let Willard Richards be ordained an apostle unless a lamb was first slaughtered and sacrificed in the temple. Joseph soon incorporated animal sacrifice into his priesthood. He stated, "It is generally supposed that sacrifice was entirely done away with when the sacrifice of Lord Jesus Christ was offered up, and that there was no necessity for the ordinance of sacrifice in the future. But those who assert this are certainly not acquainted with the duties, privileges, and authority of the priesthood or of the prophets. These sacrifices, as well as every ordinance belonging to the priesthood, will, when the temple of the Lord shall be built, and the sons of Levi be purified, be fully restored and attended to in all their powers, ramifications, and blessings. It is not to be understood that the law of Moses will be established again with all of its rites and variety of ceremonies, that this has never been spoken by the prophets, but those which existed prior to Moses' day, namely, sacrifice will be continued." Melanie Gibb just confirmed more of this in her letter. Chad also had a magic stone which told him things and guided him, just like Smith. He was literally copying him. Chad told Laurie that he was getting information from the Book of Life, that he had access to it. He created a portal and would ask questions with a pendulum. I saw him twice with a gold-coloured pointy pendulum with a string attached. The last time I saw Chad and Laurie, he asked questions with the pendulum to see if people were light or dark. That was troubling to me. I thought, this is how he gets answers. He told Laurie that Peter, James and John came to him in 2017 in the mountains, Melanie said. I got together with the Reddit community to discuss thoughts at this time before finishing this saga. So here comes a lot of speculation and theories that are purely unsubstantiated claims but are included just to offer the perspective of what people online and the world might be thinking about this case. Some people are asking whether Laurie's mum plans to address the media or make a statement, because on Dateline she claimed that she spoke to JJ on October 1st, on the phone. She also said that Laurie had told her, "You know me, Mum, the kids are fine," and also said that she was being threatened by people who loved Charles, and that's why she'd put the kids into hiding. She claimed that Laurie stockpiled JJ's medication, and he wouldn't have been without them when they found the pill bottle that hadn't been refilled for months. She claimed that Alex was the most easygoing and relaxed. Laurie's mum and sister claimed that Laurie never spoke of the end of the world to them, and that she put her children's needs in front of her own. Since all of the events around the discovery of the bodies, Laurie's sister and mother seem to have kept themselves far away from any media, and people are wondering if they plan to make an address at any point soon. People online have also speculated about Zulema Pastines and about how she has not addressed the media in any way. People have noted that it is strange she is a herbologist, and a lot of seemingly healthy people have suddenly died of natural causes in this case around the time that she appeared. A lot of people speculate that poison was potentially involved with the killing of Tammy and Alex and the children, and that's why they've ordered extra toxicology tests. Some people have wondered if Chad's kids, or if Tammy even, thought that something strange was going on the Daybell property. Although I think it would be unfair to suggest that Chad's kids knew anything at this time. They are also grieving for the loss of their mother. One person noted that perhaps everybody got married so quickly because of spousal privilege, although this doesn't count in Idaho if kids are involved. One person also noted that the sudden move from Utah to Idaho might be because bodies cannot be cremated in Utah, but they can in Idaho. So perhaps originally, Chad planned to have Tammy's body cremated. People speculate about whether Ian Pawlowski knows more about the cult that he had married into. He says that he didn't know what he was getting himself into, but him and Melanie had only been dating for a few days before they got married, and he claims that they met on a dating app when he only lives down the road. People are wondering if perhaps Jason Mao from Preparing a People knows more. He is the person that introduced a lot of these characters to one another. So I'm recording this episode on the 17th of July. The end of the world is supposed to happen in 5 days, according to Laurie and Chad. Chad appeared in court yesterday and pleaded not guilty to the current charges that have been given to him. For now, Chad and Laurie remain in jail and cannot afford bail. The Daybell children have moved out of the Daybell property in Salem. And everybody is now grieving the loss of Tylee and JJ Ryan. Through all of the story, through all of the sensationalized media, through all of the questions around whether this is a cult or not a cult, it's important to remember that so many people have lost their lives in this tragic tale. So many people have been affected by the amount of grief and death that surrounds this entire story. And most notably, 2 children have had their lives ended so prematurely. Tylee and JJ seemed like very beautiful, very intelligent, and very loved children. And I'd like to just take a moment of silence to honour their lives. I apologise again for the time it has taken me to finally get to the end of this story. Perhaps there will be a time where I can update everybody once these cases have been through the judicial system. Until that moment, join me next time where I will be talking about Sea-Doo and the troubled teen industry. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing me on cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. Don't forget, if you'd like to, I have a Patreon and a GoFundMe, and I would really appreciate greatly any support anybody can offer. Thank you for listening. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.